students and answers their questions on the topic at a Virginia high school. Now we'll look at Serbian news coverage of Day 30 of NATO airstrikes on Yugoslavia from government-controlled Radio Television Serbia in Belgrade. This portion of the news was recorded today at 1:30 p.m. Eastern and translated here at C-SPAN in Washington, D.C. It's about 40 minutes.
You're watching the primetime news of Radio Television Serbia. Good evening. The criminals of the NATO alliance hit with their missiles this morning around 4 o'clock in the morning the residence of the President of the Federal Republic of Yugoslavia, Slobodan Milošević, in Užička Street number 15 in Belgrade. The President of the Republic and his family were not at the moment of the attack in the house that has been razed to the ground. The house of the President of the Federal Republic of Yugoslavia in Užička Street was in a residential area of the city and is surrounded by other family homes. The criminal and terrorist attack against the President's residence, when one of the missiles, certainly not by accident, hit exactly the bedroom, is undoubtedly an assassination attempt on the legitimately elected head of a sovereign state, and thus represents a classic terrorist act committed and organized by the war machine of this criminal alliance. This terrorist attack against our President just confirms that NATO criminals that have never been seen as such in the history of our planet have lost their mind, and they have gone so far and they have been embroiled so much in their crimes that they do not restrain from the most abhorrent and despicable actions. This attack is the last drop in the flow of evils that can no longer be tolerated by the freedom-loving people. The majority of people of our world are now fully aware of NATO as the greatest threat against humanity. No doubt, this crime will stir the majority of the world public against this war machine that seeks to conquer the world. The federal minister, Goran stated that the attack against the residence of the President of the Republic, Slobodan Milošević, an attempt to assassinate a leader of a sovereign state, that this is an organized criminal action. The statements of the NATO officials that this was simply an attack against the building and not against the President was called a high point of cynicism. Where should the President live unless he lives in his residence? This is where Minister Matić asked the foreign journalists, stating that this is a continuation of the evil attack against civilian targets. The Foreign Affairs Ministry spokesman Nebojša Vujović stated that this attack is also an attack on all our people and continues the campaign of terror against the population. Are kindergartens the next threat? The President of the Republic, Slobodan Milošević, met in Belgrade the special envoy of the President of the Russian Federation, Viktor Chernomyrdin. The President of the Federal Republic of Yugoslavia, Slobodan Milošević, received Viktor Chernomyrdin, the special envoy of Boris Yeltsin, regarding the Kosovo crisis. After the arrival of Chernomyrdin, he stated at the airport that he is coming with specific proposals on how to end the Yugoslav tragedy. Chernomyrdin stressed that the support for the Russian initiative is shared by the Commonwealth of Independent States that he visited prior to his arrival in Yugoslavia. The President of the Federal Republic of Yugoslavia, Slobodan Milošević, gave an interview for the Texas TV station from Houston. The interview lasted for almost an hour. The President Milošević accused NATO for the appearance of the refugees. Up until the 24th of March, before the bombing, we didn't have any refugees, but since then we've had a lot of them. This is a result of the dirty aggression. President of Yugoslavia stated that he is an optimist regarding the seeking of peaceful resolution, but NATO should stop the aggression first. We believe that when the bombardment is stopped, it will be very easy to go back to the political dialogue, stressed among other things the President Milošević in the interview for the TV station from Houston. The interview that the President of the Federal Republic of Yugoslavia, Slobodan Milošević, gave to the Houston TV station will be shown after this these news. Aggressors continued last night and today to destroy civilian targets throughout our country. They bombed Belgrade, Valjevo, Kruševac, Kraljevo, the area of Pristina, and the last bridge in Novi Sad. Sometime around 3 o'clock today, NATO aggressors again hit the only surviving bridge, Žeželj's bridge in Novi Sad. 4 missiles hit the already damaged bridge just at the moment when various catastrophe response teams were trying to repair the existing damages on the bridge. The anti-aircraft units of our defenders tried to prevent the attack. The criminal airplanes of NATO, in what may be the strongest attack against Pristina, threw over the wider area of around Pristina about 40 missiles. The bombing of this area began around 10 o'clock and 20 minutes this morning, close to the village of Sofailia, which is predominantly Albanian, then the area of Golesh, Albanian villages Pomazati and Belačevac, the village of Aivalia, and one missile hit yet another village. Up until 4:30 in the afternoon, there were a total of 50 missiles that were hitting Pristina. Members of all ethnic groups from Kosovo, Serbs, Montenegrins, Albanians, Turks, Gypsies, held in Pristina today a marvelous anti-war protest meeting in which they sent a message to the members of NATO countries to stop this war. From this magnificent anti-war gathering in Pristina, attended by over 10,000 members of all ethnic groups in Kosovo, there was a single message to the presidents of the countries and governments of the NATO countries that are gathering in Washington. Stop the bombing, because Serbia will never be conquered. We want peace. We want to live as human beings. This message was spoken in Serbian, Albanian, Turkish, and English languages. From this big national gathering in Pristina, we, the Serbs, Albanians, Turks, Gypsies, are sending you a message: stop the war. When you meet tomorrow at the planned meeting against the Kosovo crisis, instead of the false statements of your officials that lead us into an ever deeper war in Yugoslavia, consider our message, which speaks the truth. There are differences among us, but no conflicts. The only conflict was caused by this now defunct terrorist group KLA that enjoyed your support and the help of your bombs. The problems on Kosovo, we want to solve them in peace. Among us who live here, your bombs and killings are the only obstacle. We want all of our people of Kosovo, regardless of ethnicity and religion, to go back to their homes, from which they fled because of your bombs. Please stop the bombing, because they're fleeing it. Please stop the bombing that prevents them from returning. We want to repair those homes, schools, hospitals, factories, kindergartens, bridges, railroads, instead of spending your wealth in order to destroy us and kill us. Use it to help us restore what you have ruined. We ask you to stop this war and let us live in peace. Please remove the obstacles to peace. On the day of your 50th anniversary, decide for peace, not for war, for good and not for evil. Don't let this message for peace be downtrodden by your executioners, by the terrorists from KLA and the drug mafia, and all those others without remorse who have been bombing us for 4 weeks, killing our children. We wish you to be courageous, so that you can conquer your egos and arrogance and decide for peace. In these areas we have always lived together, Serbs, Albanians, Muslims, Turks, Gypsies and other groups, and this will continue forever. Nobody can disrupt this. Norwegian government will at NATO summit in Washington demand to stop the bombing against civilian targets in Yugoslavia, stated one of the secretaries of the cabinet of the president. Norway did not allow NATO to attack civilian targets, such as the headquarters of the Socialist Party of Serbia. This cannot be justified by being called military target. The president of the Russian Duma, Gennady Seleznyov, thinks that Russia is obliged to really provide concrete help to Yugoslavia if there are ground troops to expand the operation. Gennady Seleznyov stressed that here he means primarily military and technical assistance. Mr. Sergei Baburin believes that NATO's rampage has to end. NATO did not succeed because of the heroism of the Yugoslav people. However, the development of the events shows that there is a real need Russia to help Yugoslavia with military technology. In the State Duma of Russia, during a session dedicated to the so-called New World Order, the participants, political scientists, officials, parliamentarians, adopted a document requesting immediate end of the bombing against Yugoslavia. The Foreign Ministry of Russia recommends a call for a session of the General Assembly of the UN for bringing charges with the Hague Tribunal against military and political leaders of NATO who have committed war crimes. The Italian Prime Minister Massimo D'Alema stated prior to his departure for New York that he will urge the Secretary General of UN, Kofi Annan, that UN should take the lead in seeking a political solution of the Kosovo crisis. The Italian Foreign Minister Lamberto Dini stated that the aggression against Yugoslavia simply should exclude ground intervention. This will not be discussed at the NATO summit. Dini said that this is a result of a discussion and joint agreement of the foreign ministers of France, Germany, Italy, and Great Britain 2 days ago in Paris. According to the latest poll of the respected public opinion research institute Pew, as reported by Associated Press, more and more Americans do not support the policy of their government. The loss of support for Clinton and his military hawks is a serious signal that could have grave political consequences. There are more and more Americans who wonder where is their leadership taking them. For example, 57% of the American citizens believe that this aggression against Yugoslavia is a big problem for the US. 66% express grave concern for the fate of their soldiers in the event of a ground war. 38% of Americans say that they are very concerned by the cost of the aggression that will have to be borne by the US taxpayers. The president of the Chinese parliament, Li Peng, reiterated today that the only solution for Kosovo is political dialogue. In his discussion with the president of the Committee for Defense of Greece, Karolas Papoulias, he stressed that China insists on an urgent end to the bombardment and renewal of political dialogue. According to Zheng Menjibao, during the visit of the Prime Minister of China to the US, he insisted on an immediate end of the aggression and return to a political dialogue. The Belgian weekly Solidar notes that all of those who support peace should support Yugoslavia, its people and leadership who are fighting for the very high goals of freedom and territorial integrity of the country. They stress the exceptional role of President Milosevic, who from the beginning has been for the unity of former Yugoslavia, and now he defends against NATO aggression, the freedom and sovereignty of the country, insisting on peaceful resolution of the Kosovo crisis. The Belgian paper is appealing to all of the leaders of the world to stop the war. Solidar states that this aggression had been prepared for a long time and that the world leadership had sought the breakup of former Yugoslavia for a long time. Now they're attacking Milosevic because he doesn't want his sovereign country to become a NATO base and a colony of Western countries. President Milosevic is also attacked because he's preventing the preparations of the war of NATO against Russia. The Italian parliament, that is to say 160 parliamentarians, signed a joint appeal for an immediate cessation of the bombing of Yugoslavia. It's necessary to stop bombardment in order to renew the political dialogue. They add that they are completely against the ground troops because this would be an occupation of a sovereign country or part of that country. The consequences would be dramatic. This would be political end of autonomous Europe. Pope John Paul II, during his meeting in Rome with the participant of the World Summit of Nobel laureates, appealed for stopping of the bombardment and respect for human rights. From Rome, there is another peace appeal by European writers Mario Lucio, Harold Pinter, Raffaele Alberti, Giovanni Rabboni, Fernando Chivano. According to this appeal, every, even slightest constitutional unit of the European culture, every single trace of European culture has to condemn this war in the heart of Europe as a cruel anachronism and step back of human evolution. The Roman paper Liberazione writes that the aggression of NATO and the tragedy in Colorado are two identical faces of the U.S. moral illness. They are noting the irony of the address of President Clinton to the Americans that the conflict should be resolved by peace. But violence is the main export good of the American policy. Whoever wants to pursue war as a policy, an imperial system, war becomes blood, war becomes part of their blood. If they're bombing Belgrade today, why couldn't they bomb a city in Colorado? Is killing in Pristina worse than killing in Colorado? This is concluded by Liberazione. The private TV station from Katarini that was showing the program of Radio Television Serbia has been deprived of its broadcast license. From the 5th of March, this TV station was daily picking up the satellite program of the Serbian TV for the Thessaloniki area. The owner of the TV station has announced a great protest in the Greek media. German lawyers, law professors and students concluded that the human catastrophe in Kosovo was caused by NATO's bombs. British government and Tony Blair continue to pursue the aggression against Yugoslavia. This is said by many commentators in London who are concerned by the militaristic policy of London that could lead to even greater consequences. The former British diplomat Michael Tate asked through the Daily Telegraph for an urgent end of this aggression. He asks Blair to stop his warmongering rhetoric and explain to the public of Britain the real truth about this aggression, that this was illegal, that they didn't prevent humanitarian catastrophe, that they're constantly expanding their requests toward Yugoslavia. Russian warships continue their maneuvers in the Black Sea, simulating attacks with cruise missiles, while combat ships are close to the Yugoslav territory in the Adriatic. The Russian Black Sea Fleet from Sevastopol has already sent a reconnaissance ship to the Adriatic to monitor the NATO actions. In view of Russia's opposition to NATO's action and the upcoming NATO summit, all observers agree that these maneuvers are not easy for the alliance. In Pentagon, the American Admiral Tom Wilson, at the press conference of NATO, admitted for the first time that the alliance has had losses. Of course, he didn't go into details, but according to unofficial data published by papers and TV stations, NATO aggressors have lost so far tens of planes and helicopters and over 80 soldiers. Admiral Wilson recognized that NATO indirectly cooperates with the terrorist KLA, who are recruiting fighters from the Albanian refugees in Albania. This war is going to destroy some of the principles of the Western civilization. This is one of the commentaries in the Times. They say that it is absolutely wrong that the bad behavior towards Albanians was the cause of the aggression. The bombardment began because President Milosevic refused to accept foreign troops in Yugoslavia, although this request is completely incompatible with the idea of sovereign states that has existed for 350 years and has been the basis of the rule of law. This war is conducted to destroy the principle of sovereign states and to remove it as a relevant factor within this new world order. This is written in the Times commentary. Blair says that this is a war for new internationalism, and Solana says that the goal is to create a new strategic concept of NATO, which would ultimately lead to the ability of the alliance to intervene against sovereign states. NATO is acting outside the authorities of its own charter. They're openly cooperating with terrorists who are really against freedom of Kosovo, but essentially pursuing the interests of a wide-ranging mafia and drug trading network. Daily Telegraph, in its editorial today, expresses doubt in the moral qualification of President Clinton to lead the alliance. As they report, more and more American commentators are accusing Clinton for this wasteful use of the American military resources and the loss of the American credibility by their ultimatums against Serbia. The words that Clinton used 30 years ago to justify his refusal to participate in Vietnam are now hitting him right in the face. Most of the participants in the talk show of the Canadian CBC TV station condemned the aggression against Yugoslavia and the participation of Canada. During the show, Canadian military persons, diplomats and journalists spoke about Canada's participation without a UN mandate and the consent of the National Parliament, calling it a grave mistake. The former Canadian ambassador to Yugoslavia, James Bisset, said that the insistence on the Rambouillet agreement was an ordinary ultimatum and shame for international diplomacy. The Spanish paper El País criticizes the inconsistency of its government regarding Kosovo. They're consistent only in their dedication to NATO. They say that the government is completely disregarding the public opinion and that essentially works against their own nation. El País warns the government about this and says that their so-called orientation towards diplomatic solution is cynical. In reaction to the decision of the Romanian parliament that today made a decision to allow NATO troops to use the airspace, the Bucharest paper Quotidien says that there is a great difference between the government and the majority of the population. 84% of the population wants an immediate cessation of the aggression against Yugoslavia. According to most media, the greatest responsibility in this regard would be with the President Constantinescu. According to Jerusalem Post, in an article called The War of Peacemakers, there is a grave danger that this war could expand to all Balkan countries. In Yugoslavia, there are many civilians being killed. When United States make a mistake, not even their friendship towards Israeli state should justify this aggression. The voice of protest has to rise against this loss of civilian lives. This is what happens when so-called peacemakers go into war. Their political decision goes undeniably to this stupid strategic decision-making and the tragic results we see in Yugoslavia. It's ironic that the greatest war in Yugoslavia, in Europe for the past 50 years, has been conducted by politicians who are so-called peacemakers, such as Robin Cook and Jacques Chirac. In Tokyo, many professors and students held a meeting against the aggression against Yugoslavia. This was a symposium in which there were more than 200 participants from Tokyo universities. There were many professors, experts for international relations, problems of Central Europe, and humanitarian workers. The French and Italian soldiers from the evil alliance that are stationed in Kumanovo in Macedonia are beginning to leave their units and flee towards Greece. According to information from corroborated sources, they are helped by their fathers who have been worried by the possible outcome of the whole situation for their children. They're trying to help them go to Greece. In Kumanova, they're saying that in the past few days there have been several French arrivals and Italian fathers who have come and tried to save their sons from this mindless mission in the Balkans. After many previous cases of desertion, now the command of the evil alliance in Kumanovo has strengthened its securing of all of the units. The members of the alliance, increasingly disliked in Macedonia, are from day to day exposed to various attacks of the locals who throw stones at them and chase them away from their homesteads. A panic-stricken group of courageous NATO soldiers in the middle of the town of Kumanovo had to shoot above their heads when they were attacked by local children and youth. This shooting has provoked a new wave of anger among Kumanovo people who oppose the presence of NATO in Macedonia. Albanian separatists from Kosovo want to expand this war to Macedonia. stated the Minister of Internal Affairs of Macedonia, Pavle Trajanov. The Albanian terrorists throughout Macedonia are collecting and accumulating great caches of arms, and they were planning military actions for September of this year. The intention of the terrorists was to create a great Albania out of Macedonian areas and other areas in the Balkans inhabited by Albanians. Every day they recruit new members for their terrorist organization. From the refugee camps alone, 1,000 people have been sent to Albania to be trained and then returned to Macedonia. The terrorist organizations in Macedonia are especially encouraged by the bombing of Yugoslavia. There is a real danger that there would be armed actions against the police and the army, and thus have situation in Macedonia that develops in a similar way as in Kosovo. The French President Jacques Chirac addressed the French nation last night, trying to justify once again the aggression against Yugoslavia. He said that he supports the bombing of Yugoslavia in order to save the honor of NATO. But if Chirac and his company had any honor, they wouldn't have gathered together 19 most militarily powerful countries in the world and engage 30 more countries in order to attack a small and peace-loving country. A country that they tried to completely block with sanctions and various punishments, and even not allow it to arm itself. If they had had any honor, this would have been reason enough not to begin such a criminal aggression. But if they really are appealing to honor, or whatever honor remains, Chirac and his company should immediately stop the bombing and the aggression. By continuing this aggression, they admit that they have no honor, as well as that they are no human beings, but they become more and more criminals that sooner or later will have to be punished. From day to day, there are more and more anti-war protests. Throughout the world, many people of various professions, religious, ethnic groups stand up together against this aggression against Yugoslavia and the criminals of NATO. Citizens throughout Germany continue to protest every day against this aggression. Several thousand demonstrators in Hamburg expressed their fury and bitterness against this American war and genocide against Serbian people. The line of protesters were calling NATO, mafia, Adolf Clinton, Kosovo is Serbia. They're appealing for an immediate stop of the bombing and the destruction of the civilian targets. In Hamburg, they abhorred the terrorist attack against Belgrade as a method of the so-called new relations of the world. Many other countries, just as Germany, are essentially not approving the terror against Serbian people. Bulgarian citizens are protesting against the intention of their government to allow the use of their airspace for NATO planes for possible widening of the war. The protests were joined by many opposition parties who are calling for a referendum so that citizens of Bulgaria could actually express their opinion as to whether they enter NATO in the first place. Many of these protesters are talking about upcoming meetings and blocking of the assembly building, so that the decision of the parliament regarding the opening of the airspace cannot be made. The Association of Italian Journalists added its voice to the criticism against Javier Solana as a result of the bombardment of many civilian targets as well as TV stations. The International Journalist Association wrote to Javier Solana that it seems that NATO has changed its goals and targets from military to civilian, including journalists. As the International Journalist Association notes, the spokesperson Jamie Shea has few days ago sent a letter with guarantee that the targets will be entirely military and not radio and television stations. Under the slogan "Against Aggression and War and for Peace," there was another protest meeting at the square of Nikola Pasic by workers from the workers' unions from Serbia. The criminal forces of NATO, led by the greatest world criminal, have been destroying our country for a whole month, killing our people, said the president of the Serbian Workers' Union, Tomislav Banovic, calling on the world to stop this aggression and the destruction of our country and re-establishment of freedom. Do everything you can to stop this criminal destruction of our country immediately. The Union of the Serbian Workers has gained support of colleagues from throughout the world, from Russia, Greece, Italy, Macedonia, France. Many protests have been organized in other cities. Collection of humanitarian assistance is happening. We want to stop this dark period of the human history. We want to punish those who are responsible in front of the International Court. This was stated by the president of the Serbian Workers' Union. There were also representatives of the workers' unions from Greece and Republika Srpska who expressed their support. We came here to unify our voice, together with your voice, to tell the world that we don't need world policemen, that criminals such as Clinton cannot behave like this at the threshold of the 21st century. The workers and the citizens, during this protest, began walking towards the building of the Radio Television Serbia. The president of the Serbian Union presented a letter to the main news editor of Belgrade TV, Milorad Komurakov, commending him and all of the employees. Afterwards, all of the workers went towards the building of Politika, the daily paper, to give their support to them. There is an ever-growing bitterness among our people against this month-long aggression that is killing innocent civilians and children and destroys so many achievements of our architecture. People of Yugoslavia continue to protest in their cities and send messages to the evil alliance. On behalf of the citizens from Dimitrograd and Bosilegrad, the presidents of the two respective counties demanded of the government of Bulgaria to stop the decision regarding the use of the airspace that will lead to further destruction of civilian targets. The members of the Bulgarian minority in Yugoslavia will, together with the other citizens, share their destiny and defend their fatherland until they win. This is said in the letter of the citizens of Dimitrograd and Bosilegrad. On today's date, in 1945, about 600 prisoners of the Croat fascist camp Jasenovac tried to find freedom. Only 60 of them survived. In this greatest factory of death in the Balkans, the Croat fascists killed more than 700,000 Serbs, Jews and Gypsies. On this day of memory for the victims of the Jasenovac concentration camp that were killed on the 22nd of April, the Patriarch Paul of the Serbian Church held a liturgy in the Serbian chapel as well as commemoration of the victims. He said, "Today, we are suffering just as well as people from those who are not people, but who have power, but no feelings, no compassion, no justice." Group of 15 foreign journalists, most of them from Western media, visited today several facilities in Kruševac that were destroyed by the NATO alliance. 13 journalists and cameramen from American and European media visited Kruševac today. Representatives of Figaro, the Russian television, Reuters, New York Times, Washington Times, Stern and Rai visited many industrial and civilian targets that were damaged by the criminal NATO alliance. In front of the factory that was ruined recently, the heating plant for the city and many of the ruined houses, the only comment was that if this led to one civilian life, that was one life too many. To convince themselves on the side that the aggressor missiles hit primarily civilian targets, these journalists will also visit Niš and Kuršumlija. This evening, just as many other evenings, our proud citizens continue to defend the bridges that, just as many civilian targets, are especially important for the NATO alliance. We're building bridges throughout the world and you're destroying them. You cannot break our spirit. Europe, wake up. These are the messages of hundreds of people of Belgrade who have come once again on the Gazela Bridge to be a living shield against the NATO aggressor. I'm from Belgrade. I have nothing else to prevent, to keep, but the connection between these two sides of the river. I would like to send a message to these criminals. I would like to tell them. There was a very noble woman who was given Nobel Prize for Peace, Golda Meir. When you learn to love your children more than you hate us, there will be no war. I came here to contribute to the defense of our beautiful Serbia and to send a message to those damn Americans to leave us in peace. We love peace, music, but if we need to fight, we'll fight. Just as every other day, we're here to defend our freedom and the honor of our people. We hope this is not going to last, but we shall defend everything that is holiest to us. Today we are all of one party. Its name is freedom. During this program, we received a new report about the mass return of Albanian refugees to their homes on Kosovo. They had been forced to flee those homes because of the NATO bombardment. This is what our reporters recorded close to the village of Šajkovac in the Podujevo area. A column of Albanians is slowly returning towards their homes, to these villages. There are thousands of them. They say that there are probably even up to 20,000-30,000 people. Yes, we are coming back slowly. When do you think this is going to clear up? We hope soon. This older man, an Albanian man, says, I'm from Trnava village. Can I go with you, please? I would like to visit my relatives in the village of Trnava. The minister responds, there are no problems. Everything is safe completely. They're returning to their villages, and a great number has already come back, and they felt that it was the actions of these terrorist organizations brought about a lot of evil, and that they're telling us through their discussion with us that they're dissatisfied because they allowed it to come to this level. Many of these Albanians promise that they'll be completely loyal to the local government here where they live, and that they will fulfill all of their civic duties just as it is expected of them. How did you live for those 20 days? Oh my God, it was almost a month like dogs. Every sane person wants to go back to his homestead and house. Do you have children? Yes, I do, 3 kids and a wife. Many people, many young, male people. While I look at them, I wonder, what did that French guy want to say, who says that the males are separated from females, the males are sent to the camps, while only old people and women return? If they could only see this.
C-SPAN, created in 1979 by America's cable television companies.